Yeah, it really is. But, going back to creating that connection, it reminds me of one of my recent clients. It was actually late last year. I was working with him. He was in community involvement, and he was interviewing with a senior vice president of marketing at Bank of America. And he was going for a community involvement or enhancing the community presence type marketing position for Bank of America. And we were looking up the hiring manager, and we found out that she was on the board of she was on the board of directors for the ballet, and he knew somebody on the board of directors for the ballet because he was very involved in the Kansas City community. And so he actually contacted that person and said, hey, by the way, I'm going to be dropping your name when I talk to her. And he did. He dropped the name of his friend who's on the board, and she knew him, and they built that connection immediately. It was also a nice way to show a personal reference or actually as a fellow board member, a professional reference that she could contact. And that built that connection very quickly. It warmed up the interview immediately. But number two, let's move on to the second way to build chemistry, and that is impressing the front office. So what I mean by that is, when you think about, actually I read a survey about what percentage of executives say that their secretaries or the executive assistants influence them on their hiring decisions. And it wasn't a third, it wasn't a half, it was actually 2/3 of executives ask the opinion. And I remember doing that when I was hiring for a director position at American Century. I asked the person, it was actually a manager, that brought that director candidate into me, and after they left, I asked, thumbs up, thumbs down. She gave me a thumbs down, and that really affected my decision on who I was going to hire. So the thing that you can do to increase that chemistry with the front office, whether it be maybe a manager or a director that brings you into the interview, or even just a receptionist that you meet when you first come in, make it a point to remember the person's name that takes you to see the hiring manager, if there is one. Sometimes the hiring manager comes out themselves. But if there is somebody, then thank them by name when you leave. So you also give them the same firm handshake and the respect that you do the person that's interviewing you. That can be very, very impressive, and it could sway the decision of the hiring manager. So number three, the third way, is projecting the right image to build chemistry. When we're on the hiring end, a lot of us reach a negative decision within a few minutes. So, if you have the credentials, you establish either a good initial impression or you don't. And you've probably heard that people make a decision about you. They have an impression about you in the first 90 seconds. And that's absolutely true. And what they found in psychological studies is that it's very hard to change that, that image of you after the 90 seconds. Usually that initial impression of you stays with somebody.
So, Tammy, what determines this aspect of chemistry, and what can you do about it?
Well, people silently react to the image that you project, the way that you dress, your posture, your body language, the things that you say about really any subject, the way that you answer questions. Each of us are continually projecting some kind of image. So it's not just physical, it's not just dress, although your appearance does speak before you even say a word. But it's also a matter of attitude and enthusiasm, and whether you project integrity. Integrity is a really big piece of it. So this is a really big point regarding attitude. Make sure when you go in there in an interview that they know, you have to get across to them that it's just as important to you that the job is a good fit as it is to them. And I can't stress that enough. This is really huge, especially if you're unemployed, because employers are very scared. They're very worried about people who are unemployed, that you're going to take anything because you need a paycheck. Sometimes I say to my clients, hiring managers are like horses and snakes. They smell fear. So you've really got to come across as being very selective in who you choose. That's a really, really big point. But I also want to talk a little bit about appearance. So a lot of people ask me, how do I dress when it comes to an employer? Do I always dress in a suit and tie? What if it's an employer like maybe a manufacturer? Or I had a client recently who was interviewing with Ryan Lawn and Tree, and everybody there pretty much wore like a uniform, like a uniform service type uniform. It was not a suit and tie type place. So he asked me, how do I dress? Because that's not how everybody dresses there. And that's probably not how the owner, I forget his first name, but his last name's Ryan, Mr. Ryan, that's not how he dresses. So he's going to be dressing in a polo shirt and khakis. So I said, you really need to think about dressing 2 levels above what everybody else would dress in that organization. I really think that a suit and tie is usually the best choice, even if it's a very casual, relaxed atmosphere. If you're on the fence as to how to dress, really choose the more formal look. And I think what that does is show respect for the hiring process. Also, I need to let you guys know that when I say guys, I'm talking about men, that you need to spring for a newer suit. In other words, if your suit is more than 5 years old, you really need to get something, even if it's like a $100 or $150 suit from Men's Warehouse, get something that's newer. Don't show an outdated look. Also, especially if you're older, that's a really big deal. Also, make sure that you've got a haircut that's recent. You don't want to look shaggy. For women, as far as appearance goes, and this might be a given, but I think that it's worth repeating, conservative colors. If you've got a suit jacket, that's preferable. You can either go with a skirt or you can go with pants, and that's fine. Like me, I don't like a skirt because I don't like to wear high heels. So I'm often seen in a suit jacket but pants and a nice scarf. No perfume, light makeup, not a lot of heavy makeup, no big jewelry. Really, you want nothing to detract from your accomplishments. If you're sitting there with a lot of accoutrements, if you will, then the person across the desk from you is noticing that and not listening as intently to what you're saying to them. So let's move on to step number 4. Paying compliments builds chemistry. And when you think about it, do you like compliments? And that's kind of some people are hesitant to give out compliments because they feel that it comes across as false flattery. But if you like compliments, you can assume that others do too. Of course they do. So what you want to do is before the interview, read about the firm, read about the company, talk to people about the company, try to uncover some things to say, specific things. Really, when it comes down to flattery or compliments, it needs to be sincere and it needs to be specific so that it doesn't come across as false flattery. If you're sincere and specific, then it really does boost the chemistry between you, and that's something that you do in the small talk when you first get into the office or the conference room. You just build that. If nothing else, if you can't think of anything else to say or if you can't find anything to make a compliment on, you can always talk about how pleasant the drive was into the office or how short the drive was. Wow, I really expected it to be 30 minutes, but it only took me 15 minutes to get here. That's just something pleasant to say about the whole experience, and it builds that chemistry in the small talk when you first get in there.
Well, and I would say, Tammy, that just from my experience alone, that being specific is the key. There's no getting around it, and it also comes across as being more legitimate when you are being specific. Absolutely.
Okay. And then let's go to technique number 5, which is build chemistry when you ask questions. So let's go back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the hour, where a successful interview is more like a two-way conversation and less like a question and answer session. If you're looking for a six-figure position at a high level, it is not going to be a question, answer, and then save your questions till the end. Let's hope not. I mean, that's really not how you define a successful six-figure interview. Six-figure interviews will be for executives, for senior-level positions with a lot of experience, for highly skilled positions, and they don't feel like the type of interview that you would have if you're going right out of college for a $35,000 or $40,000 a year job. By the way, if you're making six figures or have made six figures, you really need to be going after those six-figure positions and not for $60,000 a year jobs. That is not really a good fit for you. You're actually much more likely to get a higher level position that pays more than you are competing at a $60,000 or $70,000 level. So going back to building chemistry when you ask questions. Ideally, I like my clients to be asking questions for a good portion of every interview. What that allows them to do is assert some control of the interview, and it reduces the interviewing pressure because you feel more confident during the interview. So here's how I suggest doing that. I suggest asking the first question after answering the second question from the interviewer. In other words, probably the first question that they answer or ask is going to be, so tell me about yourself. And we'll talk about that in a moment on how to answer that. But the second question might be about one of your strengths. It might be about something on your resume. After they ask that second question and you answer it, then you say, well, can I ask you a question? So this is in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the interview, and all of a sudden it has quickly established the conversation as a two-way exploration rather than a question-answer session where you save your questions until the very end. It makes it a successful high-level interview. So this is probably one of the most important pieces to making this a successful interview is to ask questions. And most importantly about that, it's asking intelligent questions. You know, you will build your image in the eyes of the interviewer, and you're building chemistry. You want this person thinking, this guy or this gal seems really sharp, very well informed, very impressive. So among those questions, and remember the questions that you ask are going to be relevant to the company, they're going to be relevant to the position, maybe to the industry, and they're based on your research. So this is your time to shine when it comes to showing how dedicated you are to this company. You've done your research and you've gone beyond just looking at their website. You know, even at a high level, most people don't think or don't know how to go beyond looking at somebody's website. So if you're asking questions to show that you've really done your research on this company, you're conveying to the interviewer that you really care about this position and you're willing to go the extra mile. So among the key questions that you should ask are ones that are designed to find out what's, well, for lack of a better term, to find out what's wrong with the job or the company. In other words, remember I talked about being selective in the company that you work for. You need to come across as being very concerned about the health of the company because you're in it for the long haul. You want to show them that you want it to be a good fit. So you might consider some of these questions as being offensive questions as opposed to defensive questions when you're fielding the answers.